Would you mind answering a couple of questions?
Yes.
All right.
Don't mind, don't mind.
I know what you meant. How many of you have experienced obstacles in your life? Show of hands. That's what I figured. Well, I'm hoping that I'm going to be sharing with you today some tips, tricks, techniques that will help you overcome these obstacles. Now, I am no stranger to obstacles. When my little sister was born disabled, we were living in Africa at the time, we moved to the US, and my parents completely focused on her, and I had to be an adult at 5 years old. That's a little bit of an obstacle, because at 5 years old, you're really not ready to be an adult, or even a teenager. Fast forward, somewhere around the 90s, I meet someone, I marry them, turns out he's abusive, and I spent 13 years trying to make that marriage work, By the time that marriage was over, when I looked in the mirror, I didn't even know who I was. And I had to spend several years sort of unpacking myself, because I had to cram all of who was me into a little box somewhere, because everything that I was offended his sensibilities. And then, of course, more recently, if you've followed me on Facebook, about a month ago, my computer died, taking all my data with it. A decade of data, pictures, videos. I'm so depressed. Now, good news on that front. It turns out Time Machine has been backing up, so my data is there. It's accessible. I'm just now having a real hard time getting it into my current computer. So I know a thing or three about overcoming obstacles because I face them every day, as I'm sure all of you do. There are two things you need to have as a foundation if you're going to overcome obstacles on a regular basis in your life. The first is you need to decide that obstacles aren't going to stop you. Because if you don't make that decision, obstacles will get in your way and they'll stop you right where you are. So you need to decide, I'm not going to let this piece of uncomfortable obstacle stop me. I'm going to figure out a way to go over it, under it, around it, or through it. The second foundational thing you need is, there's several terms for what I'm trying to say here. It's often called growth mindset, emotional resilience, mental toughness, and grit. Basically, usually those terms are used in different areas, like mental toughness tends to be talked about in sports, and growth mindset tends to be talked about in educational things, but they're basically talking about generally the same thing. Someone who cultivates a growth mindset knows that when obstacles happen, they aren't the end of the universe as you know it. They're just a challenge. They're something that will possibly make you grow. They might annoy you. They might slow things down, but they aren't going to stop you in your tracks. Conversely, someone with a fixed mindset will have an obstacle and go, I'm done. And that's really easy to do. I know sometimes when an obstacle comes up to me, my first reaction is, life is, the universe as we know it has ended. And then I get over it and I move on. But this is a process. It's a process you go through over time. You have to keep reminding yourself, this too shall pass. One of my favorite quotes, I heard it in a movie. I believe it's a quote of John Lennon. I don't have it exactly, but it goes something like this. It's always good at the end, so if it's not good, it's not the end. So if you keep thinking about that, okay, right now it's really cruddy, but there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and it's not an oncoming train. So you need to cultivate this about it. So, well, how do you do that? Again, it starts with a decision. You decide, I'm not going to let this get me down. I'm going to look on the bright side of life. Emmett Fox, I believe his name is, talked about one way of cultivating a positive mindset is you think of a negative thought like an ember. So if you're sitting by the fire, it's a nice winter day, you've got your nice cozy sweater on, you're sitting by the fire, and a little ember goes and lands on your sweater. What do? You flick it off. That's the way negative thoughts need to be. You have them, you go, I had a negative thought. Because if you don't, Like an ember, if you don't flick off an ember, soon your sweater's on fire. And that's the way a negative thought can be. It can become this cycle of negativity that just brings you down. And it stops you in your tracks in so many areas. That's another reason why growth mindset is so important. We have this piece of brain right back here called the reticular activation system. The job of this part of the brain is to filter out stuff you don't need to know. Because our brain is capable of knowing everything that's going on at all times. If you're aware of all of it, you would go insane. So the reticular activation system filters out all that stuff you don't need to know and just lets you see what it thinks you want to know. A good example of this is you go and you buy a white car. And as soon as you buy that white car, all of a sudden, look at all the white cars around. It's because your reticular activation said, oh, you're interested in white cars, so I'll show you all the white cars. A friend of mine is a life coach, and she had a client who lived in the LA area who was convinced there were no tall men in LA. So they took her to a mall. There were tall men everywhere, but every time a tall man walked away, oh, that's a nice purse. And it was like her brain just pulled her away so that she never saw the tall men. So you got to beware that, RAS. It shows you what you want to see. One way to cultivate knowing what you want to see is to have a gratitude practice. Having a gratitude practice doesn't help you overcome any specific obstacle, but it helps support a mindset that is resilient enough to overcome them when they happen. There are so many ways you can do a gratitude journal. At one time, I used to do it every morning, and I would write down 5 things I'm grateful for. Right now, I'm using what's called a 5-minute journal, where you just write 3 things. And sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's hard, and sometimes it's repetitive. But if you can at least come up with 3 things a day that you're happy about, and that could be something as simple as, gee, I really like that guacamole today. I'm so grateful for guacamole. Or it could be, the sun came out today. I'm so glad the sun came out today. One day, it was earlier this week, I was on the bus, and a woman came on the bus, and she sat down, and just as she sat down, our eyes met, and she had this beautiful smile. I thought, that's what I'm grateful for. That wonderful moment of smile. She had a beautiful smile. And it was like I had this human connection for a moment. So cultivate gratitude. Now, this all is your foundation. Now that you've got your growth mindset on, you're grateful for everything, and you're flicking off negative thoughts, now you're ready to attack obstacles. Now, there are lots of ways you can do that. I can't say it's my favorite way because I'm often very independent, but ask for help. And I know sometimes it's really hard to ask for help. You feel like, well, if I ask for help, I'm weak. I'm not good enough, but that's not true. Life throws you things that sometimes you are not capable of doing by yourself, not because of any bad characteristic about you, but because no human being could handle that. So ask for help. Now, I want to make sure that I'm addressing all the kinds of obstacles we're talking about. Does anyone have an obstacle that they would like me to kind of give them a tip on how to overcome? Like a lot of things, that's a muscle you have to exercise.
Yeah.
And like I said, I've been fiercely independent. I have injured myself because I didn't want to ask someone to help me pick up something.
Yeah.
And then I spend like weeks paying for it. So you balance things and you force yourself to ask for help. And the thing is, you have to be okay to hear the answer no. Which is another reason why a lot of people don't ask for help. Because you ask for help, say, hey, Christopher, can you do this for me? He goes, I'm sorry, I'm busy that day. Well, that happens. The thing is, if you don't ask for help, no one's going to help you. They can only help you if you ask. And the thing is, human beings, or most human beings, I'm sure there are exceptions, really like to help people. They like to know that they can be of service, that they can help you out and be useful. So when you don't ask for help, in a way, you're kind of being selfish. Because you're not allowing someone else to live out their need to be of service. One thing is you need to get to a point where you're okay to hear no. Because if you're not okay to hear no, you're not actually asking for help. You're voluntarily telling people. And when someone's being voluntold, they can feel it. And that when someone's being told to do something rather than being asked, they're more likely to resist. And if they do say yes, they might half-butt it. So it's better, you gotta get to a point where you're like, okay, I'm gonna ask for help, I may not get it.
Or it may not turn out the way I
Or it may not turn, don't know that there's a big vision for what you want to have happen. Don't sweat the small stuff. Because life happens. You know, I really wanted to get my computer last weekend and be off and running. That's not what happened. That's not what happened at all. I mean, what's happening eventually, once everything's done, it'll be really great. Right now, it's not so much fun. You have to let go of specifics. So hold on to that larger picture and let go of the details. And that's a tough one for a lot of people. Perfectionism runs rampant. So there's this, you decide obstacles aren't going to get in your way. You give yourself a foundation of a mindset that will overcome those obstacles. And then I mentioned how you can go under, over, around, or through. Most obstacles, you have all those options. Some obstacles, you're going to have to go through whether you like it or not. So always be aware that, again, things don't always go the way we want them to, but it's always good in the end. If it's not good, it's not the end.